And welcome back to another episode of the World of Ted, where we explore how single Latter-day Saints can learn, live, and love truly enjoyable dating. I wanted to go over the comments this week from the article that we talked about last time. So let me just pull this up here. And we have the article here, Dear LDS Men, I'm Not Your Fetish. And I wanted to go through the comments from this article because we didn't get to that last time. So again, I haven't read through this. So let's just dive right in here and see what we can find. JC says, "Oh man, I've been where you are in regards to these LDS dating sites. My heart goes out to you and what you've dealt with. I too have seen a lot of despicable behavior from men on these websites. And this is from men who have the gospel, who've made covenants, and who should know better. I've come across men who are older than my father, many of whom want a young nurse with a purse, overweight, obese men who don't take care of themselves, holding out for a wife who looks like a Victoria's Secret model. I came across one man who said he didn't date chubby women when his man bibs were clearly visible through his shirt. His double chin was rather prominent, and his neck fat was spilling over his shirt collar. Men who insist that the women do all the heavy lifting in terms of conversation, initiating, making plans, etc. Men who insist that you stay by your phone 24/7 so you can respond to them right away, and who cry down the house when you don't. Heaven forbid that you have a life outside of online dating sites and apps. One man who tried to solicit money from me so he could buy video games, and another who called me his wife after only 2 months of chatting online, when initially he checked most of the boxes and it felt like this could actually work out." Okay, here we go. First of all, I'm going to say I mostly agree with this comment so far. I don't think that we're really understanding how things work here. And so let me try to offer some explanation of that. Because that's what we talk about here, right? We talk about fundamentals. So let's talk about the fundamentals of what's going on here. We talk a lot on Join the Journey Radio and also here on the World of Ted about the natural man and woman on the one side and the covenant man and woman on the other side. And just to bring us up to speed for those of us who aren't really familiar with that distinction, the main distinction is covenant men and women will prioritize making and keeping sacred covenants above all else. It doesn't mean that there's nothing else important to them. It just means that these are the things that are most important and that carry the most weight when they're making decisions. On the other hand, you've got the natural man and the natural woman, which prioritize self, which prioritize the demands of evolutionary biology to find the best genetic material, let us say, to perpetuate the next generation. So the covenant man and woman are focused more on the things of eternity, whereas the natural man and woman are focused on the things of this life and this world. And that's what they give priority to. In reality, most of us are not one or the other. We're actually combinations of both. We're not entirely evil, but we're not entirely good. We're not entirely darkness, but we're not entirely light. We're combinations of the two. And so we're also a combination of the covenant man and covenant woman and the natural man and the natural woman. But what's the split? That's what's going to be different for each person. So when you see, somebody making decisions based on the natural man or the natural woman, then what we're really going to be talking about here is someone who has more natural mindset than covenant mindset. Whether the split's, 51-49, 60-40, 70-30, 75-25, 80-20. I mean, really, it's all a matter of the majority of your decisions are going to be made with the natural mindset. And so what we really need to understand is when we're approaching dating in the different stages of the dating journey, because there are different stages, and in order to progress to any one stage, you've got to have the agreement connected with that stage. If you don't have the agreement, you're not going to progress. It's just as simple as that. How do you get an agreement? Well, how do you get any agreement? It's by being agreeable enough. By being agreeable enough. And it's got to go two ways. So what we're looking at here with this comment is just the one way from the woman's side of this, right? Where she's listing all these reasons why the man is not agreeable enough. Now, granted, most of these reasons that she's citing are based in the natural mindset. But, again, I don't know where her split is. What is it? 50-50, 60-40? And which side goes where? I don't know. I'm guessing since most of what she's citing here is pertaining to the natural mindset that, somewhere in the majority, at least 60-70% maybe, I don't know. Clearly majority natural mindset, but it's kind of naive for the man to be sitting there on the other side and thinking, well, if I'm not making myself agreeable to her, I'm not going to secure the agreement, because it takes two to get the agreement, right? You got to have two people to secure that agreement. So, again, if you've got, man bibs that's not attractive to the woman, double chin rather prominent, neck fat spilling out over the shirt collar, that's not going to be attractive to the woman. You're not going to be agreeable enough. And really what you're looking for is something that doesn't really exist. You're looking for someone who's got so much of that covenant mindset that she's not going to give any credence at all to any of those other factors. That's not a real person. That's not a real person. Real people are a mixture. So you've got to have something here. And from what she's describing here, these men don't have anything, right? So not taking care of yourself. Insist that women do all the heavy lifting in terms of conversation, initiating, making plans. In other words, you're not showing true leadership. Women are generally more attractive to men who show leadership, who take the initiative and say, let's do this. Let's go in this direction. Now, I'm not talking about being a dictator. I'm not talking about not letting the woman have a say in the decisions that need to be made. But I'm saying ultimately you need to be having a plan. It sounds like they don't even have a plan to offer, to discuss, let alone, what direction to go in. So, that's not going to be agreeable enough. Heaven forbid you have a life outside of the dating app. Well, yeah, okay. You have to service them. Okay. If your world revolves around the woman, guys, listen up. If your world revolves around the woman, that, for the most part, that's not going to be attractive. It's not really that attractive. They want someone who's making something of themselves. That's more attractive. The man who's making something of himself, showing leadership for his life, not just for other people in his life, but for his life and what he's trying to make of himself. That's where you really need to get to. Solicit money so you can buy video games? Oh, why don't you just tell her to go away? Because that's exactly what you're doing there, dude. Another who called me his wife after only 2 months of chatting online. Okay, you've got to be in the place where you are. This is true for men and women. You've got to be in the place where you are. Don't be thinking that you're further down the road when you're not there yet. Be in the place where you are. There are stages to the dating journey. So recognize the stage that you're in. And you know what stage you're in because, again, you've got to have an agreement to progress to any stage. And if you don't have the stage, you don't have the agreement for that stage that you think you're in, you're not really there. And you know what agreements you have and haven't made because it takes two to make an agreement. So what more can I say? It's fundamental. Once you understand the fundamentals, this stuff gets really easy. I hate to say that it's a cesspool out there, but it is. I'm glad you've come to recognize your worth and have realized that it's better to be alone than to settle for far less than you deserve. It's far better to be alone Maintain your independence and know what your standards and deal breakers are, and refuse to break from them. That is to have your life and eternal salvation tied to someone else you aren't happy or compatible with. Well, again, as I've said before, it's better to be single and happy than married and miserable. But we don't need to be thinking in terms of, binary. It's got to be black or white. It's one or the other. We're thinking in two extremes here. And it's not really a representation of reality. It's not like, well, I got to be alone or I'm going to be blissfully happy with someone who's completely perfect for me from day one. And that's erroneous thinking and not really aligned with reality. I just wish we taught that in young women and why is the single adult war relief society more than we emphasize marriage to just any guy. Well, you don't want to marry just any guy, right? You should have some standards. But you need to make sure that you've got the right standards. And make sure that the standards that you have are going to lead you to where you need to be. And not just, a whole list of things that are holding you back from where you need to be. But most of us don't even question that because we're allowing the natural mindset to just dominate our decision making. Guinevere says, or is it Genevieve? I can never remember. Just depends on who you're talking to. Hi, I consider the expo to be a place of inclusion, so please consider the fatphobia in your comment. Oh, here we go. It's like, yeah, consider the fatphobia in your comment. I love that. Here we go. Apologies for the insensitivity in my prior post. My intent was not to be fatphobic, but to point out the hypocritical behavior of men I've come across on LDS dating apps. I use this particular example of a man I came across on Mutual who fit the physical description of my prior post, yet made belittling, rude, and snide remarks about how women should look despite not holding himself to the same standards. That's definitely double standard. I realize now that I could have and should have worded this better, and will be more considerate of how I discuss this particular subject in the future. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. Okay, that's a fair and equitable response, I think. Searcher says, this blows my mind. Do you think this is a case of a few guys who are serial scumbags giving the rest of us makes a bad name? Or is this a majority of guys on these sites? That's an interesting question. Let's see what JC says. Good question. I've met some good guys on dating websites, both LDS and non-LDS. The majority of the better guys I've come across weren't members of the church, but actually knew how to treat a woman with respect. It's truly baffling and troubling to me how non-LDS men get this better than most LDS men do. I don't think most LDS men are scum. I'm sorry. This may just be your experience that most LDS men you've come across are scum, but I don't believe that most LDS men are scum. In my experience, most LDS men are the exact opposite. With that said, there are good LDS men online, but they seem to be very elusive and harder to find match with. The issue I've stumbled across with a lot, not all guys on LDS dating sites, is that they either freak out over a simple greeting, talk about ironic since they insist on the woman initiating the conversation most of the time, who knew that a simple hi, how are you, could be interpreted as a marriage proposal. There are reasons for that, or they immediately want to rush into marriage. There are reasons for that too. I had an experience on Mutual where I matched with a guy who seemed like a good catch. We were compatible. He had his life together. He initiated all conversations. And then after a period of speaking online, exchanging phone numbers and communicating that way, he said out of nowhere that he wasn't ready for a relationship. Oh, well, okay, off the bat, I mean, I don't know the particulars of what's going on here, but off the bat, I would just say this is a nice way of putting you down and saying he's going for somebody else. He's got a better offer somewhere else. I was baffled and wondered why this guy wasted my time as well as his. He wasn't wasting his time, honey. You might feel like it's a waste of your time, but he doesn't feel like it was a waste of his. He was playing the field, which if you're in the casual dating stage, that's what you should be doing in the casual dating stage. You should be seeing multiple partners. Part of the problem we have with LDS dating is we want too much commitment too soon. We're not willing to let things take their time and grow naturally. So, yeah, okay. But the real kicker is that the guy was 35. 35. His biological clock was ticking so loud I could hear the ticking. No, honey. No. His biological clock is not ticking at 35. I mean, if he were like 85, you might have a point. But 35? No. See, time is so much more advantageous to men than it is to women. It really is. Because, I mean, the natural woman, if you're 35, the natural woman is really going to be kicking in. Unless you've dominated it with the covenant woman. I mean, the natural woman is really going to come in and dominate and be like, I need to get going on this. Right? It's going to be screaming loudly for you. But just because it's screaming loudly for women at that age doesn't mean it's screaming for men at that age. I think this is another problem that we have. We don't think like the other thinks. We think like we think. So when we're trying to become more agreeable to the other, we're thinking that what matters to us is what's going to matter to them. And so you see women trying to collect all these things that are impressive to them, but men don't care anything about. And so, they're like, I don't understand. I've done this, this, and this. I should be more impressive to these men. How come I'm not more impressive? Because you're not collecting the things that matter to them. Men do the same thing. They say, I've got this. That should be impressive to them. But if you're not collecting the things that matter to them, then, again, you're not agreeable enough. And if you don't secure the agreement that you need by being agreeable enough, then you don't progress. That's all there is to it. Let's see. I can hear the ticket. It feels like the majority of men I've come across on these websites are under the impression that if they don't ever age and that they can postpone eternity. Not so. They may think they're the experienced, suave, older gentlemen, but men in the 31 plus range pushing 18 to 20-year-old girls, it's not cute. It's creepy. The majority of LDS women that I've come across actually share that sentiment. But again, you're looking at the natural man. There have been studies that have been done on, what age is the most attractive to men and women. And it's very interesting that for women, the age of man that they're most attracted to depends on how old they are. Generally, they want someone who's around their age. For men, no matter how old they are, the most attractive women is someone who's 23. It's really what it is, So the 23-year-old man is most attracted to the 23-year-old woman, and the 23-year-old woman is most attracted to the 23-year-old man. But the 33-year-old man is most attracted to the 23-year-old woman, whereas the 33-year-old woman is most attracted to the 33-year-old man. That's just the natural man, natural woman, right? This is how it naturally is. So you just got to understand that's what's playing out here. That's what's playing out here. The problem starts in young men or women. No, the problem does not start with young men and young women. You're thinking this is all about, you're thinking this is all some education thing. It's all determined by how we look at the world. And it's not about how we look at the world. That plays a part in it, yes. But there are things that are going on with the natural man and the natural woman that are going to operate regardless of whether or not you know that they're operating. That's what we need to focus on. Learning more about the fundamentals and the natural man and the natural woman and the covenant man and the covenant woman and how we overcome the natural man and the natural woman. And I'll give you a hint. Mosiah 3:19. The youth are told that it's all or nothing. Look at each person as a potential marriage partner or nothing. Okay, well, if that's what they're being taught, then yeah, I agree with you. There is a problem there. There's no room for friendship or room for something to naturally develop. I wish that instead of marriage being pushed so heavily, that we were instead encouraged to become friends with members of the opposite sex, develop meaningful friendships that way. Tell them that dating is about getting to know people as well as yourself. It's important to get to know a lot of people. Save the serious dating marriage talks for when they're older and after the mission. The current system isn't working and just leads to dangerous extremes. And for what it's worth, Searcher, the fact that you're asking this question shows you're one of the good guys. Okay, well, I agree. Questioning is a good thing. I think we do need a different approach. But, yeah, we got to get back to fundamentals. That's really what it all comes back to. I can try to wax eloquent on it, but really it just needs to come back to fundamentals. Carolyn says, this is disturbing. I'm so sorry you went through that, Ramona. It's shocking how immature and superficial some people are. This man had the chance to get to know a smart, interesting person. He just blew up that opportunity by totally focusing on the physical. Can't argue with that. Chiaroscuro says, I'm so sorry this is happening. It is not okay. And that's right. It's not okay. Like I said, take a stand against it when it happens. Sarah says, I'm a single woman, mid-30s. This has also been my experience with LDS dating. It's bad out there. Several years ago, I attempted online dating via LDS dating sites, and I never received so much abuse in my life. Between relatives telling me I needed to just put myself out there, and then the response to my doing that being men 15 years my senior, calling me names and accusing me of lying in all the ways they say no fatties, I was broken. I didn't even have any dates. Just a constant stream of abuse. Like Ramona, I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I worry about the women that aren't like us. They're ending up in toxic relationships and receiving this emotional damage in person and in intimate settings. After many years of prayer and searching, I received a personal answer that surprised me. I need to look for a spouse outside the church. It's the hardest answer I've ever received, especially since it came right before a pandemic. But my experience communicating with men on dating apps has improved dramatically. There are still bad ones out there, but it's so much better. And hey, you know what? That is a fundamental, right? You need to partner with the Lord. And if the direction he gives you is to go this way, then that's the way you need to go. I don't think we need to generalize that and say that's the world for everybody. I think there is some value in flirt to convert. I think that could be a legitimate approach that needs to be considered. But I don't think it should be the go-to. And I like how she said, after many years of prayer and searching, it's like this wasn't something she just decided on the spur of the moment. She didn't just give up and just throw in the towel and say, okay, this is it. She actually went through a process where she came to this decision and grew into it. So I like that. And again, if that's the way this works out for you, then hey, that's what you need to do. I think it's the first, that should be like a tourniquet option though, really. You really want to date inside the faith as much as possible. Let's see, Plato's Cave says, better to be alone and wish you were with someone than be with someone and wish you were alone. Amen to that. That's very true. I have an LDS friend who, after her divorce, married a non-member and is, by all appearances, well and happily married. Appearances could be deceiving, so we don't really know, but okay. How do you say that? I'm probably going to totally slaughter this. Carrie Yatis says, say more about how you broke your boyfriend's arm. Deliberately? That sounds pretty abusive. It does sound abusive. I agree without context. Jokes about DV are not cool. So before I got baptized, here's the story. I was always super quiet, but I could go from 0 to 1,000 super fast. I never joke about it. It's not something I'm proud of. There was a cheating boyfriend when I was a teenager who lied and cheated on me with my best friend at the time. His explanation was because I wouldn't have sex with him, and gaslight the Hades out of me for months before it all came out. When I found out, I legit snapped. I think that's understandable. Beat him up with a hockey stick and broke his hand. A couple of years later, we reconnected as friends, and I sincerely apologized. Why was I so stupid? He ended up dating another friend of mine, but we were both in a much more mature place to deal with a pretty good friendship. So even though I was aggressive at that moment, I tried to remember those moments. Therapy helped a lot with anger issues. That's good to hear. I try not to get mad these days, but this encounter really helped me learn to be a nicer, kinder person who wasn't held hostage by anger. Interesting story. So here we said, Sister Stacy says, I gave up on dating 6 years ago and I haven't looked back. I'm sorry you did that. It's funny because 2 of my coworkers met their now husbands on Mutual and both wanted me to join. I did try LDS singles, something like that, back when online dating was in its infancy. Met a guy, we hit it off, met a couple times, and then he dumped me via email. I also met a guy who obviously had a foot fetish, Then there was the man who profile listed his age as 90. I've told the Lord, if he wants me to be married in his life, I'm expecting it to be like Rebecca in the Bible. I've put the work in. The horse is dead. Honey, I'm here to tell you, you haven't put the work in. Sure, you've done some work. You've put in some effort. And I don't doubt you when you tell me that it's a lot of effort. I don't doubt you when you tell me that you feel your sacrifices have been great and that you have no results. But, that's like saying, well, okay, I'm going to give up on this recipe, okay, because I was using salt when I should have used sugar. A lot of the problems we have with dating come down to the fact that we don't understand what we're doing. We don't understand how to approach it. So it's like, you lean your ladder up against the wrong wall and, you climb to the top of the ladder. So you make all this effort and then you get to the top and find out you're not where you want to be. It's because you're leaning your ladder against the wrong wall. You've taken the wrong approach. You don't understand the fundamentals. So you need to back up and reevaluate your approach and ask yourself, am I really attending to fundamentals? And, so then that begs the question, do you even know what the fundamentals are? Because if you don't know what the fundamentals are, there's no way you're going to be able to evaluate whether your approach is aligned with fundamentals. So then your next step needs to be learning the fundamentals. You put the work in, the horse is dead. Well, I got news for you, honey. The horse is not dead. It's just the horse that you were trying to ride. That horse is dead. But, you got to approach it the right way. You've got to approach it the right way. Giving up was the most freeing thing I ever did. I don't need a man. I don't need a husband. I love my life. I feel this is where my heavenly parents want me to be. Wow, that's insane. I agree. That's totally insane. Yeah. You don't need a man? That's not true. Women need men, and men need women. We're way over time for this, so I don't have time to really go into that. And maybe I should just talk about that in a future episode of Join the Journey Radio. In fact, I think I might do that. Let me do that. Let me talk about how women need men and men need women. That would be a fascinating episode of Join the Journey Radio. So we'll key in for that one. Last comment here. I'm sorry this has been your experience. It sounds so awful. We need to move away from the family-centric vision of salvation. Anything that relies on other people's agency just doesn't seem right. Our own choices determine our standing with God, not whether other people were up for a good fit for joining the team. I will agree with this in part. It's not the family-centric vision of salvation. It's the family-centric culture of the community amongst Latter-day Saints. The family-centric vision of salvation, there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with it is the culture that we have as Latter-day Saints as we come together and we try to be on the path that gets us to that place of salvation. That's what's wrong. It's the culture, not the doctrine. It's the culture that's a mess. And so we need to get the culture back to where it really needs to be, which is centered on Christ and keeping as many sacred covenants as we can. Well, we got to the end of this, and now we're way overdue for this episode of the World of Ted. So I hope I was able to help you with something. There's so much more here we could talk about. Leave a comment down below if you want to continue the conversation or ask a question that'll spur something else on. And be encouraged to come back next time for another wonderful episode of the World of Ted, where we explore how single Latter-day Saints can learn, live, and love truly enjoyable dating. See you next time.